viewpoint. From the other side, Republican Senator David Perdue of Georgia. He is a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Perdue, welcome back to Meet the Press, sir.
Good morning, Chuck.
Let me start with the basic this week. You said this week that the Senate should not consider new evidence. There's a lot out there with Lev Parnas. Why not?
Well, Chuck, what I said was no evidence within the scope. What we are obliged to do is to look at the case presented to us from the House. But I think it's very rich to hear people talk about, oh, what the Senate needs to do is have a fair trial. We're purposed to do that. But where was that outcry during 116 days of investigation and trial in the House? What we're proposing to do right now is exactly what we did during the Clinton hearing, and that is to hear both sides present their cases. We can talk about how long that might take here in a minute. And then let every senator ask a question or several questions. And then we'll go to a decision point at that point, which they did in the Clinton case, about whether or not we have further information or more witnesses come to the U.S. Senate. But let me remind everybody, Chuck, that in the Clinton case, they decided to have more witnesses come in, but the only 3 witnesses they approved to come in had already given testimony in the House. They just wanted clarification.
Let me ask you this. It does sound like you don't want to see this dismissed immediately, but you're not yet open on witnesses. Are you still open-minded on witnesses?
Well, I am, only within the scope of these 2 articles of impeachment. My personal preference, Chuck, would be to see this thing dismissed out of hand because I think it's an illegitimate process in the House. They did not give this president due process. However, what Mitch McConnell has decided to do, I fully support. He has all 53 Republican senators backing him on this, and that is to do this exactly like we did during the Clinton impeachment hearing.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What is Tuesday going to look like? We're going to have this back and forth. Are you looking to speed up this trial day-wise? Are we going to have, instead of 5 hours of trial a day, double the amount of time? What is it that you guys are going to be proposing on Tuesday?
Well, we'll see how the vote comes out on Tuesday, but what we're proposing, and we've tried to enter these negotiations with the other side, but they won't have any conversation until we deal with witnesses up front, and that's not what we did during the Clinton trial. And so what will happen Tuesday is Mitch McConnell will put forward his proposal. We'll have a vote on that. That proposal right now will look very similar to 24 hours of presentation by the House managers over 2 days, then 24 hours of presentation by the president's team over 2 days, and then 16 hours of questions submitted by the members in writing to the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice decides whether or not they get asked and how they get asked and what sequence. And then we have, at that point, the opportunity to do exactly what we did after phase 1 in the Clinton trial, and that is to decide where we go from here. Do we have more witnesses? Do we need clarification? Whatever. Those motions will be done then. That's our proposal.
Why shouldn't the Senate hear from Lev Parnas under oath? This is somebody who is an associate of Rudy Giuliani, who was at the center of this. Why not have the United States Senate put this man under oath and hear what he has to say?
Again, secondhand information. This is a distraction. This is a person that's been indicted right now. He's out on bail. He's been meeting with the House Intel Committee. If the House felt like this information was pertinent, I would think they would have included him in this, in his testimony in this.
How is it secondhand? He was in Ukraine. He was doing the bidding. He seems to have some material evidence that might be helpful in connecting some dots.
Well, that's the deal he's trying to make to get his sentence reduced. I'm not sure he does at all, personally.
Why do you think folks like Mr. Parnas end up so close to the president?
Oh, I don't know. And the president says he doesn't know who he was. He wasn't close to the president at all. I don't accept that at all. Let's put this in perspective.
Why did he get so close to Rudy Giuliani? Why is it Rudy Giuliani bringing some people like him so close to the president? Does that bother you?
Well, what he was trying to do was get access into the government of Ukraine, and that was one way to do it. But let's put this in perspective, Chuck. The headlines of the Washington Post on the day President Trump was inaugurated said that the campaign to impeach this president has already begun. This is an impeachment looking for reasons. They want to undo the 2016 election and, in fact, the 2020 election, I believe. So I really think that what happened in the House was not a fair trial. It's illegitimate because of that. They denied due process to the president. We're going to try now to have a fair trial in the Senate. Can you imagine, Chuck, if in the Senate we were to not allow the House managers to present their side of the case, that we would make the decision and we could vote this with 51 senators to only hear from the president. Can you imagine the outcry that we'd have over that? Well, that's exactly what happened in the House.
Let me ask you this. I know you don't believe this rises to ousting the President of the United States. Do you think what the President did with Ukraine and this decision to ask for assistance on a political opponent was a legitimate use of presidential power?
Answer this, Chuck. The President of the United States is responsible for rooting out corruption. We're giving money to a country that we are afraid is going to the wrong people for the wrong reasons. He is asking for help to root out this corruption. He asked President Zelensky to actually talk to the Attorney General about it. You can characterize that as talking about a political opponent. What he's talking about is an American citizen that was potentially involved in corruption. That's what this president was doing on that phone call. It was a congratulatory phone call.
In 2014, if President Obama was calling Hong Kong or calling governments asking about you and your business career and your time living in foreign countries, going, this guy wants to be a United States Senator, we just want to make sure he's on the up and up, would that be a legitimate use of presidential power?
That's a totally improper characterization. What happened here was there was evidence of potential corruption, and what the president was actually following up on was that. But I come back to this as well. It seems to me that what we're talking about here are the details, but we have people no less than Jonathan Turley, who testified in the House. He's a constitutional law professor at your alma mater there at George Washington. He said that neither of these articles rise to the level of impeachment, and but besides that, they have not proven either one of these in the House case, and we'll see when they present it to the Senate next week.
But let me ask you this: How would you present? Jeff Flake wrote it this way. Your former Republican colleague from Arizona, Jeff Flake, a former senator. Okay, touche. But he basically wrote in an op-ed: if President Obama did this exact same thing, would you be sitting here as comfortable defending what he did as you are President Trump?
In Fast and Furious, he did exactly this. He withheld evidence from the House of Representatives, and the Republicans decided that it was not obstruction of Congress. The Democrats agreed, and we did not pursue it. Nancy Pelosi, Nadler, all said that that was not obstruction. And yet in this case, when the president decides to use executive privilege, they now all of a sudden say, oh, no, that is obstruction of Congress. So it's a little bit hypocritical, I think, to see some of the comments that are coming out now versus what happened back in '98.
Would you like to see the president be more forthcoming defending his side of the story, though? Because right now it's more rhetoric than evidence that he uses to defend himself.
Well, this has all, been tried out in the media. I mean, he has not had an opportunity. But remember, next week is going to be the first time America gets to hear President Trump's defense. He hasn't had an opportunity to do that. We did not have due process in the House. It's clear. And so now for the first time, we're going to have that. It's ironic to me, Chuck, that with all the success we had last week with the China trade deal and the USMCA being passed in the United States Senate, that this overshadows all of that, and yet we have not heard the president's defense.
How was the president, though, denied due process if he denied witnesses going in front of the House that might have had exculpatory evidence?
He used executive privilege to protect the presidency. That's his power under the separation of powers principle. And every president has used that. President Obama used it. President Clinton used it back in the day. So he was well within his rights, in my opinion. Jonathan Turley agrees with that.
And I have a feeling the debate about executive privilege is going to be one we're going to hear a lot about, perhaps, over the next couple of weeks as everybody has this debate. Senator David Perdue, Republican from Georgia, thank you for coming on and sharing your views, sir. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chuck.
Hello from Washington. I'm Chuck Todd, and thanks for checking out the Meet the Press channel on YouTube. Click on the button down here to subscribe, and click over here to watch the latest interviews, highlights, and other digital exclusives.